go, boys.
Take 200 odd vehicles and 800 very odd people, let them loose in the Outback for a week, and you've got yourself one hell of a race. This is the 1988 Red X Bash. In the 50s, the original Red X trials were serious car rallies for serious drivers.
This pace is too hot. Look out!
If you take this rally too seriously, you're in big trouble. Cheating, bribing and lying. That's the way you win this event.
1 minute to go for the off. To any right there.
You want some tequila?
Got the heat turned on and the windows down.
In this modern trial, the cars have to be at least 20 years old, a bizarre collection of the rare, the rough and the restored.
I'm knocking on my door.
They've come from all over Australia, and today they're headed out into the far northwest for the official start at Bourke.
Rev it up, little boy, and ride. She said, let's ride. Rev it up, little boy.
Anyone can enter, stockbrokers, secretaries, plumbers or politicians, as long as they have a yen for adventure and a sense of the absurd.
Have you seen our mechanic anywhere? Good Lord, where is he?
Most got to Bourke for the briefing the night before the start, and those that got there were feeling pretty good about themselves, except the veterans who knew just what tomorrow could bring.
We have a small problem. It is not a major problem by any means. Certainly, for those of you that are coming back for more fun like last year, it's not as bad as last year. It's worse. For those that don't know who I am, because they come from Melbourne or Adelaide, I'm John Flower, and it's my responsibility, God help me, to organise another drought-breaking bash. Those of you who have travelled on all four will know that this is the great thing about the bash, it always brings the rain.
But the roads weren't going to be the only impediment to leaving Bourke. Just outside the briefing hall, the local constabulary were laying in wait, ready to pounce with the bash's first taste of institutionalised corruption. If you were going to get out of town tomorrow, you had to have a special Outback licence. At $30 a time between the 200 entrants, it was fundraising at its best.
Would you like any conditions placed on your licence? Right now,
Before driving the car.
I'd like to be body, sir.
Must not drive any vehicle.
By mail.
207 must not drive car at all. Court, driving car number 154.
Oh, any mail will do, any mail. Yeah, as long as it's qualified mail.
Excuse me? Yes. We're going to have to arrest you. Three, you're impersonating police officers. We are police officers. We are, yes, we are police officers. You're not. Look, different sign, different bloody uniform. Well, then we can't go on. You can't do it. Come on. Come on. Over here. Is Clint Dawkins left Bourke at 6:30 with 3 or 4 other vehicles, and the conditions, for those of you that know last year,
Day 2 and the big race was about to have its official start, about as official as this chaos was ever going to get.
The start will be delayed until I'm free because someone pay a fine, thank you.
Last minute preparation here.
Yeah, baby, yeah. Now that the day is over.
That's what you do with tequila.
Moments, but it's impossible to refuse.
In the old days, buying a couple of tickets to the policeman's ball was enough to get you off the hook. But out in Bourke, the Outback officers really know how to raise revenue. They'd already hit the bashers with a special Outback licence, but they're also offering a warrant service, and crafty drivers could buy one for someone else's arrest.
We're being charged with pollution in the City of Orange and being an imposter, failing to meet his obligations at Wellington Rugby Club. Remember those two occasions?
I plead not guilty. Totally not guilty.
Well, then we put you in.
Oh. Well, guilty I'll plead then.
Well, you still get put in.
No one was safe from small-town justice, not even John Flower, the race director.
We have a warrant for his arrest. It was issued last night. We've been looking for him all night.
I'd like to appeal to the media for a fair trial. I feel the media is being persecuted by the police here.
Flower's arrest gave one entrant a real opportunity for some creative corruption. Bailing him out would be a big favour to be called in somewhere down the yellow dust road.
And let me tell you, the Rolls-Royce is now the ultimate winner of this event. Thank you, Paul Terry.
The night before, first place on the starting line had been auctioned to a hapless team for $5,000. But in this race, it's a matter of being in the right place at the right time with the right amount of money. A fact not lost on Sydney advertising guru John Singleton, who'd somehow managed to crash the head of the starting line.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's only 8 there. Look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, they're 9 now.
And why the $1,000?
Why? To be first out. But I know I'm getting arrested as soon as I get in the bridge, so I'll be back in a...
At last, with dues paid and cars ready, the 1988 bash could start, complete with a police escort. Maybe the problem for these guys was that they were all soft touches. The police just couldn't resist one more opportunity to extort for a good cause.
You got $20 to get across the bridge?
25 going up. He's too slow. Come on. Come on. Hurry up. You hold the traffic up. $30.
Then it was over the bridge, and finally no more hold-ups, no more police, no more civilization, and no more bitumen for the next 3,500 kilometres.
Pushing ever westward, across the great divide, beyond the Darling River, towards the Outback sky. The lawless and the brave are searching for a dream, when all they found was sand and stone, where rivers once had been. They try to follow nomads like ghosts in desert dreams, and suffered in a sunburned land. Down in the last frontier, oh, they're sent up from the motherland into the greater fear, to live and never free and cry. Down in the last frontier. Cooper bats in search of work across the sweet and plain. A farmer kneels in a hungry church, just jailed and pray for rain. Back in the land across the sea, they found another war. They asked the Anzacs to believe in what they're fighting for, and they're sent up to another
like every other year, the bash did indeed bring the rain. There's no such thing as curbs and gutters out here. With a big wet, what was the road becomes just a long, thin bog. Drivers might whinge about it, but conquering these conditions is what the bash is all about. They took a few different approaches. Some ploughed their way through the middle. Others were determined to blaze a new trail, and a popular method of getting over the wetter bits was to hit them at speed. But the city slickers were to find out that that's a bit like trying to roller skate on ice. It was a new form of automotive expression, the bash ballet. Waneering was the lunch stop, a chance to refuel cars and bodies, and for most an opportunity for repairs and some advanced feats of engineering, Outback style.
All right, let's go, boys. Get this on. Renari. Oh, yes, beautiful. Good fit.
How's that?
Lovely fit.
Right. What's going to hold it there?
Check the wipers on it. The wipers will hold it. Working. Stop that mud.
Right, lovely.
Things are pretty quiet out here normally. The townsfolk had never seen anything quite like the bashers before. And these characters you'd only find in Outback Australia.
Can I have the money? Money? Thank you.
This first day, the drivers were to cover 511 kilometres. The goal was one of Australia's most isolated outback towns, Tibooburra. It was called the Bourke to Blatherskite, but as far as these guys were concerned, it was rapidly becoming the bog to bog. The mud was never ending. This might have been the true outback, but it was comforting to know that there were people all around, support vehicles, other crews. For some, it was more than just comforting. Help was going to prove essential. The road to Tibooburra took them through the Sturt National Park. Despite the scrubby desolation, the area teems with wildlife, which meant the drivers had to take special care as the sun dropped in the west. This is Tibooburra, a little oasis of country hospitality in the middle of nowhere land.
Oh, car's poking along quite nicely. I think the starter motor's full of mud, so we'll have to strip that tonight. I think the clutch may be full of mud as well.
Bit of mud, has there?
Mud.
Mud?
Mud. Mud, the record stuck.
The faster cars had made it in before sunset, but those that were still sailing the sea of mud down the road would be coming in for the rest of the night. It was a chance for some proper repairs and some quick rebuilding for those that had left more substantial parts of their vehicles down the road. If you were still up and running, it was time to hit the bar and celebrate.
Livens up the town, pretty dead sort of a town, and there's something like this is happening, pretty good.
If you want to go and have breakfast now, if you don't want to race off, there's no need for you to race. It's a very pleasant drive. I would rather it not be a, well, you can see the weather. It is a lovely drive. There shouldn't be any mud. It's all behind us. If you don't want to race off, you don't have to. The food is still on at the showground. I will now stroll down to the start and we'll get you underway. Storm Jacqueline has bought first place. Going to have the cheque delivered down here, please, Storm. What? Storm Jacqueline is just selling first place. I'm selling now.
Early morning Tibooburra, that time in the Australian bush when the piercing cold of night quietly retreats and the sun begins its slow bake on the way to the searing heat of midday.
Cold morning in Tibooburra.
Is there a good barber in town, is there? I've been trying to get it straightened for weeks and it keeps kinking up. But we're having fun otherwise.
Yes, a 6-inch tube straight through. Yeah. And that's where the steering arm's gone, the mud's gone in there, which made it. But where we are.
I think you're taking it a bit seriously, John. I think this cut-off driving does it a bit serious. Okay, on your way, sir, on your way. Have a good trip. Thank you. Bye.
This day's route from Tibooburra to Maree was to be one of the longest sections, 646 kilometres into the sort of isolation that you'd only find in Australia. It's a lonely landscape, and for number 15, the 1961 Ford Thames fire engine, there weren't going to be many fires to fight or cats to rescue out here. This is where the country changes constantly. Recent rain had made it strikingly green, a brilliant contrast to the red soil, while the clay pans shimmered in the mid-morning heat. Eventually, the roads had to take their toll on these old cars. You'd be hard-pressed to find parts for these clunkers in the city, let alone out here. And when the distances between petrol pumps are enormous, the last thing you need is something like this.
Yes, you split. There's some stains got between the guard and the fuel tank, and caused a little bit of a rupture there. We thought we'd do some running repairs whilst we're here, but we haven't got all the bits and pieces we need.
Anyone got a cigarette?
And no matter how well prepared, if it wasn't one end of the car, it was the other.
About a foot long is all we wanted. Bloody wonderful.
It's amazing what can be done with a bit of 4x2. Corner, a godforsaken spot where New South Wales, Queensland and South Australia meet. It looks much more important on the map than in real life. Those who didn't hang around to ponder the significance of the spot headed up the Strzelecki track towards Maree. It was cattle rustlers who originally pioneered the track, driving stolen herds down from Queensland. As word spread, settlement moved up the track from Adelaide and homesteads dotted its length. But this country is as delicate as it is harsh, and overstocking caused soil erosion. One by one, the thriving homesteads were abandoned. Until today, most of the buildings are covered by sand. This is the land of the Big Dipper. The road rises and falls over these undulations like endless waves in the desert. As I said before, out here it's a long way between petrol pumps, and the organisers had to have a tanker with 20,000 litres of fuel on the track to make sure the cars had enough juice to last them to Maree. Meanwhile, in Maree, they were just quietly waiting for the moving petrol queue down the road. In fact, they were all pretty excited about the bash. Well, as excited as you can get in Maree.
I reckon it's bloody terrific. Should be a bit more of it, actually. I reckon they're bloody great. I used to have a few of these old EHs and HRs and whatever.
The old DeSoto.
Oh, yeah, the old DeSotos and Plymouths and that. Good to see them back in the roads these days. Better than these tinny bloody Commodores and Falcons and that you see today. There goes one now there. I bet he couldn't make it where these fellas went.
Maree used to be a thriving town, but since they closed the railway, things have been pretty quiet here. They can still manage a few cold ones when strangers drop in, especially when it's the first excuse for a party they've had in 10 years.
I'm in the Schlitz Darrell Lee car, and when we have a small problem, we sit there and eat chocolates and drink beer, but the majority of the trip is just fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Loving every minute of it. Living out a boyhood fantasy, as are the other guys.
At 4 fantasies per car, there were about 800 all up on the bash. But everyone's reality was slightly different, and some worked better than others.
We're the tortoise and the hare, just taking it easy. Every time someone passes us at high speed, we just laugh and pick him up 100 miles down the track.
The bash held something for everyone, especially if you fantasise about mud.
Really enjoyed the mud. The car enjoyed the mud. We enjoyed the mud. Everyone enjoyed the mud. I only got stuck in it 3 times. That's good.
So it's 104 kilometres to the turn-off, and then you go into a special section, and it's if you go through the special section, it's 242 kilometres to William Creek.
As the field left town to enjoy one of the better sections on the way to William Creek, the hapless George Bevan was left stranded in Maree. His Volvo had blown up the night before, 250 kilometres down the track, and he was desperate to find anything to get him back on his way.
Hang on, Buzz.
There's a spare wheel on the back there. That's a spare
That's
wheel.
our spare?
No, it's a spare wheel, mate. It's up. See, I don't know if you want...
That's our spare radio.
Yeah.
Spare radio.
Oh, you can take that if you want. You can have it.
Yep.
Give us a call when you're ready.
The ute proved just too difficult to get going, but it wasn't the only transport the team got wind of.
I think I'll take the back seat.
Is it pre-1965? It has to be.
Why, if we go in the forward to that, I'll be all right.
Morning.
Here's a baby camel, George.
Huh?
Here's a baby camel.
How are you? You've heard about the Red X bash? Well, we're in need of your services. Our car's broken down. You're looking like you'll be very helpful. Could you take 2 people for 500 miles?
Meanwhile, the cars were barrelling up the highway on the way to William Creek. As far as the locals were concerned, the bash was good family entertainment, and they'd come from near and far to have a look. Others chose to take the rally route through the really tough country, and it wasn't long before they reached the Gibber Plains that surround Oodnadatta. Legend has it out here that the devil made Oodnadatta, and he was so disappointed with his work, he threw stones at it, and they still litter the plains for thousands of miles. Plodding through the shimmering midday heat haze, there was Peter Lehman's 1927 Buick. She'd survived 3 bashes already, and on the way, some of the worst roads in the world. With William Creek just up the track, she sure wasn't going to give up now.
The car was built for this sort of road. You know, we're mad. Anyone doing this sort of thing. Looney is a nut.
You got to have
He also picks Looney mates to take with him.
You got to be a couple of falcons loose in the car park to do this, mate. But it's good fun. Here we go, here we go, here we go.
You couldn't be sure if some were having fun or just going troppo. And if Outback Australia looked bizarre for the city slickers, it was real Twilight Zone territory for these POMs. 4 RAF men doing the trip in a 1960 Land Rover.
And we keep losing our support vehicle. And we've run out of Fosters as well.
Well, out of beer for now, until the support.
So the trip could be terrible here. We turned up late last night, about 11:30, and it was dark, cold, and we were starving. But we needed somewhere to sleep first, and we got in touch with this local in Murray, and he let us use his school, just like that, you know. That's the kind of hospitality we've been getting all the way along the trip. They give you anything, these people, they're great.
The Land Rover was set up to give the crew a good suntan in relative comfort, but puddles did prove a problem. Every time they hit one, the engine would stop. Starting her again and keeping your feet dry could prove tricky.
This old girl, the Land Rover, she's wonderful, but every time we go through a puddle, she likes to drink now and then because this thirsty weather, you see, and I don't blame her for stopping every so often to go through the puddle. But apart from that, it's wonderful. But the weather is absolutely superb.
Many of these drivers left high-pressure jobs to escape to the solitude of the outback. But as the cars wheeled into William Creek, population 7 on a good day, there he was, 20 times larger than life. Ronald McDonald and friends offering a taste of city life. The makeshift McDonald's had been set up courtesy of the McDonald's car. But while the bashers enjoyed their McLunch, George Bevan had finally found what he was looking for. Remember George? He'd wrecked his Volvo and was last seen in Maree.
Hi, mate.
Oh, g'day.
I believe you got a car for sale.
That's right.
Is it going?
Oh, well, if you find a few bits and pieces.
When was the last time you took it for a run?
Oh, about 2 weeks ago. Just drove him there and stopped him there.
How many Ks do you reckon is left in it?
Well, it's been to Birdsville and back, and...
How far is that?
If you want to sell it, I might go to Birdsville again tonight.
We might even end up there now, Luke. You could go anywhere.
Can we have a look at it first? Can we have a look at it?
Yeah, sure. And if it needs a carburettor and a few things like that.
Oh, look at this steady hand. Oh, George, you should be a songwriter. You got the O, mate.
What happened to the O?
Oh, sugar.
$250 didn't actually include a fuel tank, but they did throw in a 44-gallon drum.
Start it, Len.
After a brief brush with burgers and civilization, the convoy headed out into the great unknown, where even McDonald's dare not venture.
Shifts in overdrive. He's been up and down this road so many times. The man of his heart, such him just keeps it moving. Only the loud can take the rebel in himself. It's the rhythm of the highway as it rolls on by.
So far, string, wax and ingenuity had held many of the cars together, but now substantial bits were beginning to fall off as the finish line loomed closer.
We've been coming along and we've got 55 mile an hour flat out. We got here and we've got no oil in the engine, and we've now found that we've cracked part of the block and it's pumping oil out the side. Plus we've got no brakes, but other than that she's running like a jet.
Look at this. Bouncing baby muffler.
We found we can repair bits and pieces and put them together some other way, and I hope we'll get there.
Next day, with the drivers still trying to cobble their cars together, there were plenty of reminders of others that had only made it this far, to be finally dismembered in this automotive graveyard in the middle of nowhere. But for Roddy de Recker and his crew scouring the town for parts, this was home away from heaven.
See another one.
We've never not got a part yet. And the biggest price we've paid is 3 cans of beer.
3 cans, 3 tinnies it cost us last night. You don't want to corrupt them with money. The Valiant's handling better without the shock absorbers. That's not the theory. We started in Valiants because we knew there'd be lots of them out here, half cannibalised, and when we needed spares, they'd be here waiting for us.
And just look at them.
And just look.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
You know who drives a Valiant, don't you?
God drives a Valiant. It's God's car. That's why he leaves them all around for us, to plunder.
Ahead of the cars today was almost 600 kilometres, boring due north into the Northern Territory, along the edge of our most inhospitable and deadly wasteland, the Simpson Desert. It was out here that the Australian landscape once again showed how fickle it could be. Every corner held a surprise. If it wasn't deep sand, it was deep water. But worse than the sand or the water was what could happen if you got the two together. They thought they'd seen mud, but this was a bog of truly outback proportions.
Hey mate, when we get a bog, we get a bog.
It was completely impassable. The cars were sucked down into it, and the only way through was to be dragged out by the local property owner's grader, sometimes 4 at a time. Meanwhile, these guys had no intention of doing the rally route.
As you've paid your meal money, you might like to actually get some drinks and some tucker.
Noble bread today.
Concerned about our nutrition.
Where do we go?
There, man. I think we'll just stop at the pub.
Stop at the pub or buy it?
I didn't brush my teeth this morning, but you'll have to give me.
Oodnadatta General Store, the central business district of this tiny town. And after a leisurely sleep-in, the boys on the bus decided to stock up their survival rations for the dry country ahead. Their car, sponsored by Ella Bache, had broken down within sight of Sydney, and they'd commandeered this bus to get them to Blatherskite.
We found the bus in a yard and took the decorations, all the logos and stickers off the Dodge Phoenix, put them over the bus and continued the trip on the bus. But the irony of it is that a year's preparation in the Dodge Phoenix, it gets as far as the Blue Mountains. No preparation on the bus, straight out of a yard, and it's going like a dream. Set up with a stove, fridge, double bed. Very comfortable.
This was definitely the way to travel, on the main road with all the conveniences and some company. 2 English refugees from the London taxi, broken down somewhere 800 kilometres down the road.
We had fuel problems, clutch problems, ignition problems. What other problems did we have? Lots, basically. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning when we broke down for the last time, and the sweet vehicle came up behind us and said, look, you know, you can't stay out here. So I think safety was paramount there. We decided to leave the car. There's no way we could get stuck in the outback on our own. We couldn't guarantee we could get the car any further. So we decided that was it, end of the race for us, I'm afraid. We were very, very, very sad indeed.
The girls had never seen a real outback station, and the bus made a detour from its scheduled route to see a fair dinkum Aussie property.
What sort of wildlife do you get out here?
Oh, kangaroos,
Yeah?
dingoes.
Do they come quite close?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, you should see heaps of kangaroos north of here.
We haven't, I think we've seen about 4.
This is the land where you don't ask where you are, because you're nowhere in particular. Transition territory, either coming from one place or going to another. After 5 days on the road, most of the crews would have killed for a shower, a bed and civilization. But you had to make the best of what was available.
Excellent 5-star accommodation.
Just, you know, cleaning the face a little. Gotta look the part, you know, driving down the roller.
These guys knew how to rough it in style. Paul Terry and his crew had so far survived the worst the Bash could offer in their 1939 Rolls-Royce. And if you think a roller in Holden country looks odd, its owner never gave it a second thought.
It's not the best way to do the race. There is no other way.
While the roller got marks for sheer style, the plebs were still bashing away in their Holdens and VWs, having to hand out mighty bribes at the checkpoints to have their timesheets altered for the better.
All right, no, well, that'll really put you up well.
Yep.
Right?
No question about that.
Card, so, okay.
All right.
Good. 100 for 100.
Yeah, 100 for 100.
100 for 100.
Right then. See you later.
$100. Perfect.
But, I think the face on that is a little bit like the face of the driver, isn't it? That does the original face of a $100 bill.
Anyway,
To
we'll have
me,
to go
that's
now.
oh, but no.
They were on their way to the Rock, almost the end of this 3,500 kilometre odyssey. They've survived the mud, the sand, the ruts, the terrible roads, the broken axles and the flat tyres. And this is the payoff, perhaps Australia's greatest natural monument. And it's a monument for the bashers themselves. If they've made it this far, they've almost certainly made it to Blatherskite. And how are they going to celebrate? The same way as they always do, with a party.
They dug a bloody great hole right in the middle of William Street, right up near the cross, and there's 3 council workmen sitting down the hole, drinking tea and singing happy birthday. So I walked over and said, excuse me, I said, whose birthday is it? He said, it's the hole, it's 1 year old today.
MC for the night was Warren Mitchell, flown out especially from London by the Variety Club. But if the audience thought he was funny, it was nothing compared to the items available at the big charity auction. And up for bids, the armband Paul Hogan wore in Crocodile Dundee.
$10,500, at $10,500, at $10,500, going, gone. Well, congratulations.
It was a staggered start out of Yalara, and that didn't just mean the times they left. If anything was staggering, it was the cars and the drivers. The Bashmobiles had come almost exactly halfway across the continent. Now the only question remaining was where or what the hell was Blatherskite? The local showground on the outskirts of Alice Springs.
Great, we made it. The boys, they're on a mission from God and they came through.
Mate, we had a broken axle at Homebush, deaf steering, we lost our brakes. No problems.
Everybody's happy. Good showing, good turnout, eh? Yes, we're going to be the ultimate losers in this year's 88 Red X Bash. It took us 36 hours to do one 5-hour area. We broke the front end 6 times.